Hello, and welcome to another panel discussion by RPI Consultants. Today's topic is contract management with a focus on common contract challenges across industries. My name is Ayana Brown. I'm a senior supply chain consultant with over 20 years of healthcare supply chain experience, and I'm joined today by two fabulous colleagues, Sasha and Stephanie.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sasha Delfeus, and I'm a supply chain consultant at RPI with 5.5 years of supply chain consulting experience.
Hello, everyone. I'm Stephanie Marquez, another one of our amazing supply chain consultants here at RPI. I have about 15 years in the supply chain space, both in healthcare and in custom manufacturing. So we're really excited to be here with you today. We're going to explore a little bit about how Infor FSM Cloud Suite helps organizations to overcome some common contract management challenges in a variety of sectors. Today, we're going to focus on utilities, healthcare, and public sector county government. So we're going to share real world issues that we've come across in our engagements with our clients in those various industries, as well as how some solutions can be applied regardless of those industries. We'll also talk about some expected benefits and outcomes of those solutions, and we'll wrap up with some questions and answers.
All right, so let's talk about why contract management matters. Contracts are the foundation of business relationships for the organization, suppliers, and the end users of those contracts. Without proper management of contracts and tracking spend, there'll be impacts to the organization regardless of the industry, such as pricing gaps, overspend, and compliance risk. It's important to know, regardless of the industry, contract issues are common. We may find that clients have different business processes, but ultimately they may share similar challenges and can be offered shared solutions. So in contract management, Infor provides delivered visibility into contracts that have expired or approaching expiration. However, out of the box, the system does not automatically notify end users, including the primary internal contact, of upcoming expirations. So this limitation can lead to a variety of issues, particularly for the utility sector and other compliant-driven industries. Some of the key issues are unintended service interruptions, meaning if a contract with a critical supplier expires without timely renewal, vendors may halt service delivery. This can delay equipment maintenance or supply replenishment, for example, potentially causing service outages and disrupting operations, ultimately impacting customers and the public's trust. Another risk is the financial one. Without active contract coverage, organizations may be invoiced at non-contracted or inflated rates for continued services. Missed renewal windows can also result in the loss of negotiated pricing or favorable terms, leading to unplanned financial exposure. Finally, another risk would be compliance and audit findings, meaning operating under those expired contracts, especially without documentation or an approved renewal path, it can trigger internal or external audit findings. So those can violate the procurement policies, compromise regulatory compliance, and damage the organization's credibility with their stakeholders. So to address those issues, organizations can implement a combination of delivered tools, configuration options, and process enhancements within Infor FSM. The first thing that comes to mind is Infor Process Automation, or IPA for short. IPA can be configured to identify contracts nearing expiration and send automated notifications to those contract owners, prompting early review or renewal actions. We can then follow that up with a custom list review report in the application. So Infor offers the features of scheduled reporting or just simply having those saved list views configured for everyone that you want to see it to be able to access that report. Those reports can be configured to highlight upcoming expirations, provide visibility for contract managers and sourcing terms, which supports proactive planning. Then we can consider taking a different route or in conjunction to that, using Infor strategic sourcing along with the Infor Contract Management module to maximize system functionality. Infor allows the process of creating a sourcing event from a contract. This is when the user can modify an existing contract and flag it to send the contract lines to the sourcing module. This will enable them to competitively resource those goods or services as the contract nears expiration. Suppliers can then review those sourcing events and place bids on those goods or services using Infor Supplier Portal. Finally, the sourcing manager will review those open bid responses and award the sourcing event to the supplier with a contract output. The contract output can be awarded as a new contract or update the existing contract. It all depends on what aligns with the organization's business process. But with this process, this ensures continuity while capturing updated pricing or terms. Alternatively, we can take a step back and consider resources outside of the application to meet the organization's needs, such as manual tracking tools. So if automation isn't the place that you're, in this part of the project or within this organization, you're not ready to explore that further, you could think about shared spreadsheets, online spreadsheets, or other collaborative tools such as SharePoint. And you can use those resources to track contract expirations and even notify resources. And this will place those stopgaps, and this will be used as a stopgap solution. Finally, we can consider process ownership, where we establish accountability for monitoring contract life cycles and initiating timely renewals. So incorporating those solutions into your business process would provide positive results, such as earlier visibility of expiring contracts, which enables proactive renewal and negotiation, improved reporting and vendor communication, which keeps all your stakeholders informed, greater control over price increases and market volatility through timely sourcing, mitigation of unwanted automatic renewals, allowing for more strategic and competitive sourcing decisions, and finally, reduced operational disruptions by ensuring contract continuity and compliance.
Given a ton of different solutions for the risks that you identified earlier. So to me, that indicates it's not necessarily one size fits all, right? There's we're talking about different industries, different organizations. And we all know from experience that sometimes selling those solutions can be a challenge on bigger implementation projects. Typically, folks are maybe a little bit apprehensive about change, or they have a difficult time seeing the end result or the vision and aren't quite sure if it's going to work with their process. So taking that into consideration, how is it that you've helped to kind of mitigate those types of challenges with the clients that you've worked with?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's important to keep in mind that Infor Contract Management provides a variety of offerings to clients in various industries, as you kind of mentioned. And with that said, we need to consider the client's experience with the contract management module. So, we work with a flavor of clients. We have some that are Lawson S3 power users with exposure to PO25 vendor agreements only. We also work with those net new clients with different offerings in their contract management system. So I recommend implementing contract management in a phased approach, where first phase you can use to capture your basic use of contract management, such as having your supply agreements established, having your service agreements established, and tracking the spend against those agreements. Then you can think about a second phase to leverage more of the system functionality. So this can include implementing Infor strategic sourcing, as I mentioned. It could also include utilizing more of a technical solution to streamline the client's process. But with this phased approach method, it allows the client to feel less apprehensive about change and feel more confident in the system's capabilities. Hope that makes sense.
Great information, Sasha. You mentioned challenges related to expiring contracts in the utility sector. Healthcare faces the same challenges, and the solutions you propose would definitely help in the healthcare setting as well. You also mentioned strategic sourcing. In addition to the challenges you discussed for contract management, sourcing against existing contracts in healthcare comes with its own set of unique challenges. When suppliers request projected quantities for bidding purposes, healthcare organizations often struggle to provide accurate estimates. So here's a breakdown of some of the top challenges and why they happen, along with a few strategies to mitigate them. First up, we have decentralized purchasing behavior. So different departments like OR, pharmacy, nutrition, or facilities, they often order independently and use different suppliers. To resolve this issue, one option is to consolidate purchasing data from all departments into a centralized ERP and normalize the spend by category. Then we have usage data. So item usage data may be inaccurate, missing, or recorded inconsistently, especially if items were ordered under generic or substitute item numbers. Cleansing historical procurement data, like say for the past 12 to 24 months, and aligning it with item master data can help with that. You can also flag substitute items to give a more accurate projection. And then we have fluctuations in volume. So volumes are unpredictable. There can be seasonal patient surges, like here in Southwest Florida, where populations significantly increase in the winter months. And there are also fluctuations due to pandemics and flu seasons that affect all healthcare organizations. These all impact item usage. Therefore, we recommend using historical averages and weighted forecasts like peak season versus low season. But it's important to be transparent with suppliers that these are estimates, not commitments. And then we may have some limitations with our ERP systems. So Infor Cloud Suite FSM or other legacy systems may not offer robust forecasting or demand planning tools natively. Infor Burst can assist with that data. However, if Burst is out of scope for your project or not used at your organization, you can also customize the bid forms to capture this information for you. For instance, for one client, we modified the event header form to include a date range. That date range was used to capture purchase and issue quantities for the event line item, and then share the date range and quantities on the bid form for the suppliers to see. Now, suppliers can then provide pricing based on the projected usage, but also you can then calculate the projected spend for those items with the proposed contract price. That can aid in bid analysis. You can award lines separately, or you can award lines based on the total projected spend for all items. But these quantities provided on the bid form are just estimates. And that leads me to another challenge. So sometimes suppliers want firm commitments. When suppliers request projected quantities for bidding purposes, healthcare organizations often struggle to provide accurate estimates. Suppliers may also push for guaranteed volumes, especially for better pricing. But healthcare organizations hesitate due to demand uncertainty or the inability to provide firm quantities due to previously discussed challenges. Therefore, in events, organizations can frame projections as non binding estimates and consider offering volume tiers, like pricing for 10,000, 20,000, or 50,000 units. Here's an example of an event cover message that simply states these quantities are provided as non binding estimates based on past procurement data and anticipated future needs. And as the usage disclaimer states on the bottom right, these figures are provided for informational purposes only and do not represent a guarantee. And this can help avoid any misunderstandings between a healthcare organization and supplier moving forward. By implementing these solutions in the healthcare setting, your procurement team can make more informed decisions and suppliers can offer more competitive pricing.
I think that disclaimer email is a fantastic idea. I know I haven't had an opportunity to use that for any of my clients, but definitely taking note of that. I can see how it would certainly foster better supplier relationships with the organization. But kind of on the flip side, I'm curious to see if, in your experience with using that type of tool, has your clients ever received any pushback from suppliers, wanting that more solidified type of estimates?
Yeah. So, of course, suppliers may want firm projections, but those projections are useful for providing pricing, but it's really no guarantee. You have fluctuations in your history. You may have new projects coming up. So, it may be difficult to give firm projections. But a great estimate is better than none at all, right? And remember, a bid is not a contract. What's legally binding will be ironed out in the final contract output.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. Definitely, consistent issues across sectors, and public sector county government really is no different. They come with their own set of unique challenges. Recently, I worked with a client, and one of their primary issues that we discovered early on in the project was purchases that were made off contract, which was contributing to some overspend. And certainly impacting or reducing their negotiation leverage when it came time for those contracts to renew. Something else that became certainly impactful to this individual client was they put themselves at risk with potential policy violations, increased costs. We know that pricing is really volatile right now. And so when we have things that aren't directly associated with a contract, probably not very likely that a supplier is going to say, hey, we have this at a lower price for you, maybe fix your PO, but also certainly impacting their compliance as well. So one of the things that we did when we started brainstorming potential solutions, and I want to note that the solutions that we brainstormed did not solely reside on the system, but it also really heavily incorporated education to their end users, their buyers, as well as the department leads or the AU owners. So we, RPI and our supply chain leads on the client end, work together to leverage existing information that was found in Cloud Suite FSM and add it to a specific list view that we found. And so here's an example of that list view. The list view itself, as you know, is used for real-time reporting and certainly has benefits when you can collect that information in real time. In this example, it was able to show what contracts were linked to which purchase orders and which purchase order lines. So we talked about how we didn't solely rely on the system, but education and training. It helped to promote and enable corrective action, both with the department leads, the buyers, and the end users. So this type of report that we enabled made it easy to see which purchase orders were not tied to a contract. It was this client's policy that every purchase order needed to relate to a contract. And certainly there were those extenuating circumstances, but historically you should find 95% of those connected. We worked with the client to identify what areas we wanted to add to this existing list view. So we included the buyer. So that way, if a department head or an end user was monitoring this report, they knew who they were supposed to reach out to. When you have large organizations and maybe big buying teams, it can be confusing, or maybe you don't remember who you're working with. We included their working contract ID for them, their purchase order, their PO line. We also included data such as the lifetime contract maximum amount. So that way in this list view, they could kind of see where they were in that target. So if they were encroaching upon that lifetime maximum amount, then sourcing could step in and they could, reach out to the supplier, look to see if we needed a change request or change order to this contract and add additional funds. So on top of education and training, it certainly increased collaboration across all different departments. So again, this specific approach in this one example is one of many, but this approach ensured, that they were with compliance. It supported training. It directly was going to have an impact on reduction of overall spend. And I mentioned improving collaboration and communication between procurement and the departments. So, sometimes when we're doing the day-to-day, we're just kind of honed in on what we have to do. We don't always talk to folks outside of our team. But really through this and the identification of this report and the training of this report helped to kind of open up those gaps and those bridges. Certainly also promoting controlled price increases, which again, we know about pricing volatility. So when we have these types of controls in place, it just helps us to get an earlier corrective action in place. So it seems really kind of simple and straightforward, and this is an example of what that report looked like. But when we were doing end user training with this specific client, this report was heavily focused on in that kind of training. So through our collaboration with their change management team, we were able to kind of set the tone and let folks know, hey, this is the benefit of this enhanced report in Cloud Suite to give everyone that higher visibility that they were looking for.
That's great information, Stephanie. Thank you for sharing that. I was
You bet.
looking at this list view you created, and I was wondering if you found that some of the items that were purchased off contract were actually specials that should have been purchased on contract, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yep. And that's that kind of like that small percentage that kind of sneaks in there. So our approach at end user training was, and this client's process as well, was we trained the requesters very early on, when they would participate in our SIT or in our user acceptance testing and then in end user training of where to locate the contract information to be able to link it to the requisition. So getting it earlier on helped to impact and reduce those, onesie twosies where maybe a special was added where it should have been an item. And what we also did to make it easier for the end user was we created a quick link for the requesters of a full contract search. So they knew the contracts that they were working off of, and we gave them that list view. We made it available from the requester role, as well as those items also, so that they had the tools that they need, which again, kind of reduced that communication of, hey, I have this item, what contract is it on? And reaching out to the buyer or their department head, we gave them the information up front. So while I'm sure it still probably happens, it definitely does not happen as frequently as it used to.
Thank you.
Oh, all right. Thank you. Good question. All right. So in conclusion, we've covered quite a bit of information pertaining to multiple different industries. We've covered common contract management issues that are experienced in different sectors such as utilities, healthcare, and public sector county government. Just kind of a quick note, I participated in a panel discussion a few weeks ago from a contact of mine on LinkedIn, and it was to discuss supply chain challenges. And the industries represented in this panel discussion were logistics, automotive, and manufacturing. And you'll be, pleased to know that the common theme across those three industries as well really came down to contracts. Certainly called out as the foundation for all organizations and how to, maintain the correct pricing in volatile markets, leverage your negotiating power, and all of those types of examples as well. So it was pretty interesting. So while we only covered three, I can confirm that other folks out there are covering a multitude of industries talking about the importance of proper contract management and strategic sourcing. So we do have a few questions, and AJ, I think this question is for you. You've spoken about configurations when you were talking about your solution in your example and or customizations. What would you say in your example with healthcare, the level of effort would be specifically as it pertains to customization for the item usage and that bid analysis?
Yeah, so list views can be relatively easy to create as long as relationships exist between necessary business classes. However, the development that I spoke about for the bid analysis is quite extensive, but RPI can help with that. They just need to reach out.
And what's one common mistake that you see organizations make when forecasting usage for bid events?
I would say relying too heavily on PO history alone without validating it against actual item usage or issue quantities. This creates misleading or inflated estimates. For instance, when it comes to inventory items, just because you purchase an item doesn't mean it's been used. It could still be sitting on the shelf.
I'll take this question if y'all don't mind. What are some early signs that purchases weren't being tied to contracts correctly? Oh, I guess that is for my example. I think one of the early signs that we noticed, or at least that the customer brought to us during discovery, was discrepancies between the reported contract compliance rates and the actual spend data. So we had this gap and we're like, okay, where is this coming from? But once we started kind of digging into the purchase order and invoice details, we were able to see, a lot of these are not linked to contracts when indeed they should be. So a very observant team members that certainly have a real, passion for protecting the organization as well. Sasha, this one is for you. How can process ownership impact the success of contract renewal management?
That's a good question. And I think of process ownership, I'm thinking that it establishes that clear accountability for monitoring contract life cycles and driving renewal activities. When you think about having a resource or a department accountable and owning that process, right? If they're responsible for it, there's going to be less risk that the expiring contract will slip through the cracks. And it also fosters better collaboration across departments and enforces the policies that are established in the organization. So it's definitely helpful. And if the collaboration is strong, that communication is ironclad, I think it's going to be extremely successful for that organization.
It's a lot of good stuff that we covered, and hopefully for those of us that are joining us, I know we thank you, and hopefully we've been able to provide some insight, get your wheels turning on things that you can think about and how some of these solutions might apply to your organizations as well. AJ and Sasha, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. It's lovely to see you guys. Since we work remote, we don't get to see each other very often. So I appreciate it. And if anybody who's joined us today has any questions after the fact, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at questions@rpic.com. Those folks will know how to disseminate your questions to the appropriate team members. So thank you so much. And we hope to see you on another webinar.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.